Welcome to another episode of moTV. I'm so excited for today. Well, of course, I say this every month because I'm excited about all our guests. But today we've got a very, very dear friend. I've known her for, I'd say, close to 10 years. And we've been in each other's lives personally and professionally. And I'm talking about the one and only Marguerite Orane. She was one of the very, very first speakers that ever spoke at Mo Mondays, which is kind of cool. And let me just tell you a little bit about her. Marguerite's experience in managing her family's manufacturing business with 70 employees was, shall we say, painful. After she sold the business in order to allow her parents to retire in Jamaica, she spent some time doing her Harvard MBA. And really, she spent a lot of her time in deep introspection. She said, this has been so painful, this whole transition in business, that there's got to be a better way. Now, since then, Marguerite has dedicated her life to changing the way we work and live, and do so with joy. And that's why today's episode is called Let Go and Be Joyful. But I got to tell you, she's still got her hands in the business world. She still works with leaders all over the world. She's a coach. She's a speaker. She's a facilitator. She's the author of 2 joyful books. And we are going to find out the backstory and how it led her to what she does today and why she feels so passionate about it. I'm excited. Say hello to Marguerite. I've got my tea and my chocolate. We'll be right back. Oh, I lost my thing here. Hang on. This is hilarious. Now, we'll be right back. Oh, Marguerite. That was funny. Just when I wanted to click on the button to get to the next scene, all my windows went out to the side. I said, where did everything go? I'm so glad you're here, Marguerite. Welcome, welcome, welcome to moTV.
Thank you. Glad to be here, back with you, Michelle.
So you heard the intro. You
Yes.
know your backstory. I think what a great place to start. Let's just talk about, we've got this dynamic family with a young woman in the family business in Jamaica, very successful business, and you went through all the stages to sell it, and it was so painful. Don't all the best stories come from pain? It's terrible, huh?
I know, isn't that sad? I'm like, why can't the good stories come from joy? Because basically we don't learn from the successes. We're just like, that was good. Let me move on.
Well, I want to hear a bit about that story, and also let people know who may not know. They may not know as many Jamaicans as I know. And they may not. And I will say that Jamaicans are some of the best storytellers in the world. And we're going to see a couple of examples on that in this show today. I've got some clips racked up. So tell me the story. So tell me the story about how you got to where you are today. What was that painful part that led you to joy?
So that particular story was, I grew up in a family business in Jamaica. My parents, mom and dad, had started this business before I was born. Again, through pain, my dad got fired from his job. And so he didn't know what else to do but start his own business. Yeah, okay. And fast forward, there were 3 children, my brother, myself, my sister, and we always were involved in the business. Mommy would pick us up from school, take us down to the factory or the office, and we'd help count out the payroll. Those days, people were paid in coins. It was so funny. Anyway, fast forward a bit, my brother, who was a mechanical engineer, He returned from doing his degree in Scotland. He took over the family business. He's like 8 years older than me. And then he decided to go to Harvard Business School. He got accepted. So he called me one day. I had just graduated from the University of the West Indies. So I was all of 22 years old, 5 feet tall, looking like a little cherub because I have these fat, chubby cheeks. So I look like 16. And he calls me and he says, I've applied to Harvard Business School to do my MBA and I'm going. And I think you would be the best person to run the family business. I'm like, okay, sure. Because, what do you tell your big brother, right? So I resigned from the little job I had at the time that I thought was, whoa, got a job. And there I was now, first the general manager of this business. And then when he left as the managing director. And there were 70 employees, most of them, like 68% of them were men. And they were the hardiest men you could ever find. These were, woodworkers, right? They're like construction people. They're a tough bunch. But that wasn't so hard. The hardest part is that, in effect, I became my father's boss.
Ooh.
Oops. And that's where the pain started. Daddy was an excellent technician. He, when he installed doors or designed doors, or before that, when we did construction, I mean, his work was excellent, but a good businessman he was not in terms of financial management. So the family felt, well, we couldn't give him the checkbook when Doug, my brother, left. So give it to Marguerite. Oh my God. And Daddy didn't take well to it. And he actually made the job very, very hard for me. And Mommy was in the business. And what happened as a result is that Mommy and I became extremely close because we're like, we're in this thing together. And yeah, it was really hard. It was hard. And I will tell you, running a business in the 1970s in Jamaica was not easy. This was a time when there were all sorts of geopolitics with the, the Cold War, and there was Cuba 90 miles to the north with the Russians in there, Soviets in there, and then America was in Jamaica because, we were the little bulwark, and CIA was there, and oh my gosh, and it was very violent. And it was almost, in hindsight, I would say it was like Civil War kind of conditions. A lot of Jamaicans, middle class, left. And it was like kind of, okay, the Orane's going to be the last ones here in Jamaica to turn out those lights. And we stayed. So it was a tough time to run a business. And on top of that, there was this, what I frankly call betrayal by my father. Yeah.
That's all you're going to tell us about it?
Well, he did things to sabotage me. Things would happen in the family. You know what a family business is like, right? The lines are blurred, right? And he would do things to sabotage me. He would go to the workers and complain about me and write letters about how he was being treated by the family. And I guess he was hurt. He was hurt. And hurt people, right? But he just couldn't see his way out of that hurt and how to deal with it in a more positive way. So what it did is that it toughened me up fast, real fast, very fast. But there came a time towards the sort of end where the business was doing well. And we saw there was an opportunity to sell the business because being allied to construction, the business is cyclical. The industry is cyclical. and we were at the peak, and we realized, I decided I wanted to do my MBA, and we realized that we probably couldn't survive another downturn, and I didn't want to stay. I was there 3-4 years, and mommy and daddy were 60 years old, so that's retirement, but they had nothing. Everything they had was tied up in the business. The bank had the title to their house and that kind of thing. So we made the decision to sell the business. Best decision we ever made. And I think what happened is that decision and my going to Harvard Business School, I was free. I really felt free, like I had no family responsibility anymore. All my life, we had grown up with this responsibility to the business. The business was all around us. And so it just gave me room to think and to explore and, to go to professors and say, hey, what the hell do? I had this terrible experience and I don't want it to ever happen again. And yeah, I left HBS. I said, well, I'm not going to be in a situation like this again. Work's supposed to be fun, and it's going to be fun for me. So that's
did
where
they teach you that at Harvard? Work is supposed to be fun?
No. No. I had to find that one out.
What was the cat? And first of all, I got to tell you, I'm looking at the comments already on the Facebook Live, and people are already writing. Debbie Clark wrote, "Hurt people, hurt people." I'm going to encourage people, if you are watching this live, to post your comments. They come up and we see them. We appreciate them. Let us know where you are watching this from. You may be anywhere in the world. We don't know. So let us know where that's from. I got to tell you, Marguerite, there's something that always makes me smile inside when I hear you speak and when we talk. You doesn't matter what age we are. You always say, Mummy said, or Mummy and Daddy, Mummy and Daddy. I'm not allowed to tell my kids, I'll ask Mummy to, about this for you or whatever. I'm not allowed to call, but you, it's like, it's a badge of honor. You call your Mummy and Daddy, Mummy and Daddy. I love it. I love it.
That's the Caribbean. That's the Caribbean upbringing. We are very respectful of elders. I mean, there's still people that, that are auntie and uncle, and my children just know that my friends are their auntie and uncle. That's the way we're brought up in the Caribbean. Yeah.
So what was the turning point for you? Take me back to the moment, if there was a moment or a gradual realization when, I know you must have had this thing on your shoulders says this is way more difficult or challenging or painful than it should be. But when did you go get over that hump to say, I gotta do something to make life and business joyful?
Okay. So let me rewind back to when I was born, because I was born happy.
You were born happy. Wait, I was born happy. Wasn't it your mummy who said who named your first book, Live Free?
Yeah, Free and Laughing. There goes Mommy again. So the story is that, and I'll probably cry because I always tear up when I remember this little story. When I was about 3 months old, the business was on the verge of bankruptcy, and they were about to lose everything. And Mommy said that she would be playing with me and changing me, and she would just say to me, "Oh, they can take everything away from me, but they can't take you." And she said, I was such a joy. I would just gurgle and laugh and just cheer her up totally. So I was a very happy little girl. And I was always the one, laughing and running up and down. And even if you see my high school pictures nowadays, my class pictures, chances are I'm the one laughing. And as we say in Jamaica, skin teeth, showing the teeth, right? And so going into this situation now of this deep pain and misery was very unlike who I was. So I want to be clear that I came from a very happy place, and I had a magical childhood. It was fun and carefree, and yeah, there were low moments, but whatever. And so it was, maybe it was more a remembering that life is supposed to be joyful, because that's what I did experience. And so when I was freed of this family business responsibility, I said, whoa. So then I came back to Jamaica after Harvard. And I was lucky because I already had a job lined up in Jamaica. So when all my classmates were, going through these awful interviews, job interviews, being put through all sorts of indignities, which is what happens, I was doing pottery and tap dance classes in Harvard Square because I had my job, right? And I came back and I got an opportunity. It was with a group of companies, and they bought controlling interest in a food manufacturing company. And I remember I went to the chairman and I said, hey, I worked on it. I was in their investment banking division. I worked on it. And I said, I'd like to run this business. And he said, you think you can? I'm like, yes. And so I went there, and oh my God, that was so much fun. That being said, it started out literally with a baptism by fire, because I started there. The factory was out in Spanish Town, which is a little outside of Kingston. And I started there on a Tuesday. And on the Sunday morning, my boss called me and he said, hey, the factory burned down, I'm like, what? Yeah, well, they had a fire and it's burned down. So part of the office part was burnt down. Yeah, 5 days in. But it actually turned out really, really well, because we had this crisis that we had to deal with. And everyone pulled together, and it was just wonderful. I enjoyed that period of my life so much. I enjoyed that work experience. And I tell you, the whole idea of joy at work really hit me when one day, maybe about 2 or 3 years in, a sales rep came into the office, and he opened the door and he stopped and he looked around and he said, my gosh, what a happy place. And I'm like, yeah.
So that's interesting. So somehow, even though you didn't have the methodology and the exercises and the facilitation experience to help companies bring more joy into their workplace, you did that.
I did it.
Yeah.
And by knowing that I did it myself, and one thing I learned is that, people say, oh, culture is hard to change. Yeah, it's hard to change, but it's a lot easier than you think. But the leadership has to take responsibility for it. I mean, I had to make some tough decisions. But one thing I knew is that I had to model the culture that we wanted. So, there was people weren't allowed to yell and argue with each other. I never did it. And if it happened, they were like, that's not allowed here. And within a year, it was a totally different place. People were just humming along, and yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So I know that, you've got so many credentials. You are you've got such an impressive resume, and you're a nice person. Not that those two things don't normally go together, but you really are. You really embody, all the good qualities that you would want in a leader, in a business person, in a consultant. And I know that now you go into companies and you'll go in and you'll help them do hard-nosed business strategy. You'll also go in and you'll help them transform their culture to be more joyful.
Because the two go together. And so
tell
another
me about that.
So another turning point for me, in terms of validating what I had instinctively done, I guess, is I think it was 2012, 2013, January. I was walking through the Miami airport on one of my many trips to Jamaica or somewhere in the Caribbean. And I love magazines. And there on the magazine rack is a smiley face. No, I love smiley faces, right? And
Oh,
I
can
look.
somebody please post a smiley face in the comments. Yeah, we need a smiley face in the comments.
I'll show it to you because I have it here.
Oh yes. Mm.
So it was 2012. I always keep this handy because this is a foundation that validates that joy at work is a serious value proposition. And so this research showed that when you have happy employees, they're 30% more productive, 3 times as creative, and your business is, 30% more profitable. I'm like, well, I'm going to embrace this. I am no longer afraid to say to people, hey, Mr. or Ms. CEO, guess what? Happy employees are going to increase your bottom line. And because at first they looked at it like, oh, yeah, well, that's just Marguerite and she's kind of crazy and off the wall. But, we need serious strategy. I'm like, no, happiness and joy is very, very serious. It's the most impactful thing that you can possibly do, because there are very few initiatives that are going to give you those returns. I tell you, you do some restructuring or you do some IT stuff, nah, they're not going to give you those returns.
So
nope,
that's
not going to happen.
Interesting. So help me, and I want to show people a clip of you. This is really who Marguerite is. There's like this. There are no. What's the word I'm looking for? Help me. There's no airs about this. This is Marguerite.
What you see is what you get.
What you see is what you get. Exactly. Do you tell me? Okay, there's so many parts I want to get to, but what I'm curious about is how do you use your own story of the manufacturing experience that you had in your family business? Do you use that story when you talk to CEOs or prospects, where you say, hey, I'd like to go into your company and help with helping your employees be more joyful, because that's going to have the biggest impact on your bottom line? What do you draw on from your own experience to help them get over that kind of hump?
So I do use 2 things. One is a Harvard Business Review research, because, who's going to argue with Harvard Business Review, right?
Yeah.
And the second is less my experience in my family business and more in the business that I ran after I left business school, and where I actually transformed the culture.
The one that burnt down.
So that, yeah. And then, of course, since then, that's been a while ago, right? So since then, I've also been able to share successes that I've had with my clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that and again, this is something that I come across a lot in the whole spectrum of prospects and potential customers that you could attract. You could talk to people who are so not with you. They don't understand the value of joy. They don't understand. And they've got probably a toxic environment anyway, but not so toxic that they have to do something about it. And they're there, and that's the way they've always been, and that's what they believe. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have people who are so good and so with you that they already understand the value of joy, and they already have some of it, and they want more. And that's why they call you Marguerite. So where are your best customers, your best clients?
So I meet my clients where they are. So there are some clients that I never have that joy conversation up front. It's like, oh, you have this problem, toxic, oh, team not working. Okay. They're not collaborating. Okay, I can help them to help you collaborate better. You've got to, if someone is not ready for joy, my telling them about joy is not going to help. But once I get that contract, first of all, I'm going to turn up joyful. I am always going to turn up.
Right. So you will go in. So there's a classic example of give them what they ask for, and slip in what they really need.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the first, an opening is usually something like this. So we're going and, we're doing an offsite and we're gathering the team and, we all get together and, first morning of this 2-day or 3-day offsite and, setting up here, the ground rules and so on. And then all of a sudden I said, and I have a co-facilitator. Her name is Ellie. And I have this elephant. Now, the purpose of Ellie, what does Ellie stand for? Elephant in the room. And people chuckle, but, it's amazing that this is how I start to break the ice around fun and joy. And then at the end, I give the CEO. So if you go in the Caribbean and you see a CEO with an elephant on his or her desk, Marguerite was there. So you got to work with people where their problem is, what pain are they experiencing, and then help them through that.
Do you find what are things that okay, so let me back up a little bit. I'm curious in how, I mean, you are such a natural storyteller. You are such and how much of that do you bring into your facilitation? Do you talk about case studies but say them in a more story way, or what do you do? How do you bring storytelling into your work?
Well, what I like to do, I like to help my clients unleash their own stories, because that's when the power really, really happens. So I might share a story, hey, just to get things going. But I really like to get them to start to see the stories that are happening in their own organization or that have happened, because that stories are an emotional connection. And when people connect emotionally, then a whole new world opens up in terms of what's possible, because they shift from their rational, oh, we've always done it this way, oh, it could never happen, oh, Harvard Business Review says we need to do it this way too. Oh yeah, I feel good hearing this and I feel good doing this, and this sounds really like fun. And it just opens up a different kind of conversation. So I'm more into, I'll share my stories, but just to help people get started, because I don't want to be seen as an entertainer. I'm in a workshop or whatever and I'm telling stories all day. I want them to see their own stories and hear their own stories, because they have lots.
So how do you get them to share their stories? How do you get them to divulge? How do you even get them to the point where they recognize their own stories are the key to them moving forward?
So, they're just, maybe they're not that normal after all, but they're things that I do. You give them scenarios and say, okay, who is... Typically, really powerful stories are around like people who demonstrate the core values or a particular core value, or who are the people that you hear people talking about, that there's a buzz in the organization around. And then someone say, oh yeah, so-and-so, Glenn Smith, and boy, he is something else. I'm like, oh, okay, what does Glenn do? Oh, okay. Yeah. And you just sort of tease it out of them. But you got to start with just a slight prompt, so thin edge of the wedge in, to open them up. People love stories.
Do you find that by sharing your own personal stories, it gives them permission?
Yes, it does. Yeah. But I don't want to overshare. I will more do little snippets.
Well, speaking of a little snippet, Speaking of a little snippet, I've got a little snippet racked up. Okay. That I'm going to play right now for people. And you have not seen this in a long time, Marguerite. Here we go.
All right. So I went to this luncheon, and there was a gentleman by the name of Raoul Bardouage. He's the CEO of the Toronto Community Foundation. And he was speaking about, he was presenting the Vital Signs 2012 report about Toronto as a livable city. And he said, you know something, I'm not going to present that. What I really want to talk about is how can Toronto be a happy city? A place where we move, where we work, and where we live happily. Well, I kind of looked around. I was thrilled. I was like, happiness. I looked around and people were like, in the suits and the costume and stuff, sort of looking like this. So on the train home, I'm saying, but happy city, how do we get a happy city? Should I write Mayor Ford? Somehow, I don't think so. And then it occurred to me that happy city needs happy citizens. And then I said to myself, but which comes first? Do we have a happy city and then we get the happy citizens? Or do we have happy citizens and then we get the happy city? And you know what I decided? I decided you gotta have happy citizens to have a happy city. And so I said, Toronto is already a happy city for me, because I am a happy person.
Hey.
And it still is a happy city for me. Pandemic
Because
or not, I love this
happy
city.
person.
I love this city. People are like, oh, it's so cool. What are you doing? And, leaving Jamaica in the cold. I'm like, yeah, it's cold. So what? Yeah, you just get warm clothes. Yeah. I'm happy.
So for the people who don't know, that was a clip of you sharing a story at Mo Mondays.
Yes.
In 2012.
That's right.
November of 2012. At, I believe it was the Pilot Tavern. I think that's where it was.
No, I think it was the place before the Pilot.
The train? You think that was the train?
Yes,
the very,
I think
very
so.
first one. Yeah, it could be.
It was. Anyway, I could be wrong.
So that was a long time ago. So I show that clip. I wanted to show. I had to dig that up. I wanted to show it because it's, after all these years, it's still stuck in my mind. What a great storyteller you are and you were, but also just how part of who you are. Like even 10 years ago, it was all about joy. 9 years ago, it was all about joy, and that's who. And you're just bringing out the same qualities as you have now. So that's, yeah.
Well, Michelle, it gets back to, and this is what I work with my coaching clients who are all leaders. I work with CEOs and their leadership teams. Who are you authentically? I do not try to force them into some model of leadership.
Well, what if authentically they're just a toxic person? What are you going to do then? I guess
then they're not my client.
They wouldn't be a good client for you.
They're not my client.
Right.
I would not be the right coach for them. And I will always say that I'm not the right coach for everyone. There's got to be some connection and meeting of the minds on that. So, or minds and hearts. So yeah. But I think I am, and I can say this because I know I am a happy person. I am joyful most of the times. And even that is not to say that I don't have my low moments. But when I have my low moments, I know I have the tools to get me out of it. I know I can do that. And I know that joy is a choice. It's my choice. And so I always know that no matter how low I'm feeling, and in particular in the past year, you know how much I used to travel. I was always on a plane. I have not traveled since the 5th of March. Oh my gosh. I don't even know where Pearson Airport is anymore. Where is it? Not south, east, or west? I have no idea. But even with this, it's, yeah, you always have a choice. And of course, critical to that is a practice that most of us don't practice consciously, which is gratitude. And it sounds, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. But it's one of the first things we learn. It's one of the first things our parents tell us, teach us, say ta, which means say thank you. And we learn that. And yet we go into the workplace and we forget it. And you have rude people. I'm like, listen, didn't you've forgotten what you learned at, when you're sitting on your parents' knees? Come on. Let's get back to just be grateful and courtesy. And so in the whole issue around culture, I actually have exercises around gratitude. And I have had people cry in a work environment because they had no idea that people actually appreciated them.
So you mean
That's
tears
sad.
of joy, presumably, or tears of gratitude?
No, yeah, tears of they were like just so moved. I had no idea that this is what people thought and that I was really appreciated. That is sad. That is sad. Life shouldn't be that way. Work shouldn't be that way. No.
So you've written a couple of books. And
Yes.
I want to make sure that we talk about those books. Do you have any of them? Can you hold them up?
Yep. This is a newest one. This is Forget It, What's the Point? Letting Go and Claiming Joy. And this one I wrote in Toronto, so it has a lot of my Toronto experiences. And basically, they're stories. And people will say, well, is it a leadership book? Well, it's not the sort of leadership book that says, do this, do that, do this. But there are some good lessons about how to lead your life in here. And there is a chapter there called My Father's Boss that tells that story about that I related at the beginning. So yeah, I find writing very cathartic.
Ooh, you used one of my words. I think writing is cathartic, and writing is also forces you to think through your story.
Yes.
Many people, you being a writer, you must, I'd love to get your comment on this, but I think many people are afraid to write because it can be painful. It can be hard, even for professional writers. Sometimes especially for professional writers, but it does force you to think your story through. A lot of people say, oh, I don't need to write it down. I know my story.
Write it down. Because, the other practice that is prevalent in my leadership development work and coaching is journaling. I'm like, yeah, you got to journal. Now, the fear around writing is less about, there is a fear of what comes out, but there's also the fear of sharing it. And I'm like, no, writing and publishing are two separate things. You never need to publish, but just write, because that's what gets it out. That's how you work through things. And that's the catharsis. And sometimes people will say, well, I don't know what to write. And I'm like, well, just sit down, open your book and start writing. So sometimes when I'm journaling, I don't know what to write. And I'll just sit down and I'll say, I really don't know. I'll write. I really don't know what I am going to write today. And that is when at the end, and I'll time myself so that when that happens, I have to time myself, right? Because I know stuff is not coming up, is there. And at the end of the 15 minutes, oh my gosh, the stuff that has come out, it's unbelievable. So yeah, but you don't ever need to show what you've written to anyone. Sometimes I say, if you write something and you don't want anyone, like your children, to ever see it, burn it. It's the process of writing that is powerful.
Well, I don't know if you can see the comments that are coming up, but
yes.
I'm seeing a message I need to hear. That's so helpful.
Yes, Wendy.
I can't wait to get a hold of your book and read it. So why don't we answer that question? Somebody's asking, where can
they're on Amazon.
Okay.
They're
And
on Amazon.
hold up your other book, because I know I've got your other book as well,
This one is Free and Laughing.
which is
So this one is free and
the expression your
from
mummy.
my mom. This one I wrote for my mother's 90th birthday. It was her gift. And oh, that was such a, but I tell you something, she passed 4.5 months after I published this book. And it was beautiful because when she passed, she and I were clear. I had said whatever I needed to say to mommy through the book and through other experiences. When she passed, it was never around, oh, I wish I could tell her this or tell her that. No, I told her. So even that is something, it's such a gift to be able to have your loved ones to be complete. And I think that's what writing does.
Writing is helpful.
Yeah.
What do you advise to people? Well, first of all, where else we'll get to that. We're going to wrap up very shortly, but where can people learn more about you? And I think you've got something to offer for people, if I remember correctly. We didn't talk about this fully, but I know you didn't talk
about it. But you can go on my website, MargueriteOrane.com, wherever I am on social media. I don't go with all of these names and monikers. I'm Marguerite Orane. So Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere it's Marguerite Orane. And my website is margueriteorane.com. And you can get all sorts of goodies, free goodies on my website. Just a thing, the pop-up thing will pop up and you just put in your email and you'll get all sorts of goodies. And if you go to something called Gifts of Joy, that's where there are a number of guides like on gratitude and visioning, and there's some meditations and just offerings. And I'm working on filling that out so much, because one thing I've discovered, I have a lot of stuff on my MacBook that I need to share. It's not helping anybody on my MacBook.
You have lots of things in your head, in your heart to share, Marguerite.
Yes, I do.
Do you ever think back almost to the beginning of this conversation where we were just joking that we said the best stories come from pain, but really, do you think, I know you said you were a happy baby. You were the one, what did you call it? Skin teeth?
Kin teeth.
Thank you. Kin teeth. You were a happy child. You had a happy childhood, but do you think you would have arrived here where you are today without your painful experience in your family business?
I don't, probably not, because, and I don't spend too much time thinking about the what ifs, because, the biggest what if in my life is, what if I'd gone to Stanford instead of Harvard? It's not worth it thinking about. I'm here now, and everything that has happened in my life has brought me to this place. So one of the things I'll also say is, not only do I not live in what if, I don't live in a place of regret. So the painful experiences, I'm not dwelling on them and, oh, I wish this didn't happen, because they brought me here, right here now. So there are some painful experiences that one day I'll write more about. Maybe. But I'm grateful for all of them, at least for the lessons I've learned, and that they've brought me here to this moment.
Well, that's a beautiful sentiment. So I would suggest, if I could add something to that, is there's always a lesson in a painful moment. When we're ready to understand that lesson and possibly bring us closer to who we really are or who we want to be. And that's always a story worth sharing. Would you agree?
Yes, and there's something about the problem is not the pain. The problem is that we think we have no choice.
Oh, yes, good point.
Once we know that we have a choice, and we always have a choice, always, as bad as it is, We always have a choice. You read stories about people in some terrible situations, people on death row for 40 years and that kind of thing. And somehow they came to a place of, I have a choice here. I can choose how I feel. And once you have a choice, you can see a way out of your pain. Then your pain is no longer suffering. You can see your way out of it. So that's a crucial thing. You always have a choice. So whenever someone says, but I have no choice, I got to stop there and work with them. And that's a tough one when people think they have no choice, to move them to seeing that, yeah, you do have a choice. Always.
Well, we know that people had a choice to tune in or not, and we're glad they did. People have a choice to listen to the replay. We're going to be we love it when people show up live, but we know that doesn't always fit into people's schedules, so that we make it available on Mo Monday's video, the YouTube channel. We make it available in community.momondays.com, which is our community around people who want to get better and understand the value of storytelling and how it can change people's lives and be the source and the backbone of our consulting, our facilitation, all of that stuff. Marguerite, I want to thank you. You all, and you saw, I'm not the only one who says this. You always bring a smile to my face. Just listening to you have so much wisdom and so much heart in one person. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you to everyone for joining in. And please know that joy is your choice, and joy is what you deserve. No matter what situation you're in, there's always a little joy that you can get or see.
I'm looking forward to talking more about that on backstage with you, which we're going to get to probably in about a minute and a half. For members of the community at community.momondays.com. Looking forward to that. Thank you, Marguerite. Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank you for being part of this show at moTV. Every month, on the first Monday of the month, we have a different guest. Next month in April being close to starting with April Fools, of course. April, the theme is humor and comedy. I'm so excited. We are going to be speaking to a humor expert, humor storytelling, comedic expert, written books. It's going to be a fantastic show. I'll see you there.